Now that we've discussed the three basic types of lights, I'd like to go into a little bit of using multiple lights and how, as I build this scene with multiple lights, how they interact with each other and things to keep in mind when doing that. Right now, I have the parallel light, which is the default light that comes in when you create your scene. And if you want to do shadows in your scene, parallel lights would be the best to be a filler light to kind of fill the environment with the basic light in the background. And a lot of times what I like to do is adjust it to a lower intensity and then let it fill in the shadows so the shadows aren't perfectly black. So for now, I'm just going to go ahead and hide this light so I don't see it in my scene temporarily. And what I want to do is actually have my main light that's going to be casting shadows be a spotlight. So I'm going to go ahead and create a spotlight here by selecting, and I've torn off my palette, as you can see here. The way you can do that is by just selecting and dragging out your palette. Since I'm going to be using multiple lights here, I'm going to leave it out here. So I'm just going to select spotlight, and I'm going to click and drag in my view and create a spotlight. I'll go ahead and go to a different view here to be able to move my light into position. So this is going to be the main source of light that's going to be casting shadows in my scene. And since I have that other parallel light in there, I'll go ahead and turn him off for now so that I'm seeing more of a representation of the way my main light is going to be. So now what I'm doing now is positioning that spotlight where the main source of light in the scene is going to be, and it's going to be casting shadows on these guys. So I'll go ahead and go back to my top view. And I'll move. And that's pretty good right about there. So now it's really dark over here because there isn't any light coming from this direction. Now, since I am going to want some kind of crisscross shadows here, I'm going to fill this section with light with a point light, or a radial light, as it's called in Amorphium, which emanates from a point in space. So I'm going to create the light and go ahead and move him up a little bit. And now you'll notice that the scene is getting pretty well lit to a point where it's kind of flattening out the objects. Now, something to think about here is that if you have all your lights at 100% intensity, your scene is going to get really bright. And a good rule of thumb, especially if you're doing just a simple scene like this, is to make sure that all the lights together in your scene match up to about 100% so that you don't have any really high intensity light unless that's the effect you're trying to achieve. So let me go ahead and choose my point light here, and I'm going to go ahead and control click on the Mac or right click on the PC to get my properties. I'm going to change the intensity down, and since the other light's 100%, what I should do is bring this one down quite a bit. Since it's just going to be a filler, let's make it about 30%. So it's just filling in this side a little bit. And I don't want my other light to be 100%. So I'm going to bring it down as well to about 65. So I'll have a nice crisscross of light there. And actually, let's make the point light even smaller, even less intense, just so it's just filling in that area. And now what I'll do, kind of to fill in where the shadows are going to be kind of crisscrossing across here, where there's going to be shadows going this way and this way, I'm going to use the parallel light here, and it's this light right here. And since its direction is all that really matters, I'm going to just rotate him around kind of in this direction. Well, actually, kind of like that. And I'm going to change its intensity down because it's still at 100%, and change it down to about, because I just want it to fill in those shadows just a little bit, so I'll make it about 20 as well. So now if I go ahead and render this, what you will see is the shadows will be crisscrossing because you'll have two different shadows, and it'll be a little bit more well lit scene. Now, I didn't change the softness of the lights, so there'll still be hard edge shadows, which I can add a soft shadow edge to it. But see, now you can see that I'm getting this nice dual shadow. It's filling in the sides here a little bit. I'm getting a couple nice little specular hot spots here, giving more of a fuller look to the scene. And also, you'll notice that the shadows aren't quite as dark, and that's because I have that parallel light coming from the back direction to kind of fill in that area a little bit. So now, to get a little bit more of a realistic look to the scene, I'll go ahead and go into the properties for my lights and change these, just give it a little bit of a softer edge to the shadow. So we'll give it like about 30 on the radius of my lights. And again, the parallel light doesn't have a radius setting, so it is always going to cast a hard edge shadow. And so what I want to do is, since I don't want a hard edge shadow and I just want it to be a filler, I will go ahead and go into the shadows and turn that off on my parallel light, because I just want it to be a filler for the soft shadows. Now, in order to see the soft shadows a little bit easier, I'm going to go ahead and move my light, since it's kind of at an angle here where it would be hard to see the shadows in the render, just so you can see the effect. I'm going to go ahead and move my point light over to the side here, and I'm going to go ahead and increase the intensity of it as well, and make it a little bit higher intensity, like around 40. Well, to make it even a little higher than that, around 50. This way we can see the shadow coming from the other side. So let me go ahead and I'll go ahead and render this so that you can see the soft shadows and how they look. Okay, so you can see it a little bit better here where the two shadows are overlapping here, and here you can see where the shadow from the cone is coming in an angle here from the two different lights. So I'm getting multiple shadows there across the surface, and they're lighter because of the parallel light kind of lighting the overall ambience of the scene from that direction. Okay, so now the last thing I want to mention in this multiple lighting section is that objects can, as you saw, they're casting shadows from the lights, and they also can cast shadows on each other, and they can receive shadows from each other. And you can change that by going to the properties of the object, and under the render tab you can turn, for every object you can turn cast and receive shadows on and off. So if you have an object that you want to not be affected by the shadows, or to not affect other objects in the scene, you can adjust that here, and your render speed will go faster as the less objects in the scene have to cast or receive shadows. And so every object has its own setting for whether or not it casts or receives shadows, so that you can adjust it in your scene, either for speeding up your render time or for getting different effects within your renders.